the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is part 2 on the players of Congo DR, the final selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome back to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin, and we are back for part 2 of our mediacast on the players of the 2023 African Cup. This episode deals with the final selections of Congo DR. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad, and that was based mostly on their participation over the past 2 years. But we did consider a few other factors as well. We ran out of time, actually, to do part 2 for some of the teams of the African Cup. So today we're going back to review that, to complete the collection, as it were. So the tournament has been played by this point, but we're going to take the perspective of just before the tournament here, as if we were doing the mediacast when we intended to. So this mediacast is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is some preliminary information, including a look at the games played just before the Cup. That's 2 in November, 2 in January. Section 2 is the main part of the mediacast, a review of the preliminary and final roster that was released, which we'll compare to the list that we compiled in part 1. And in Section 3, we will summarize reviewing surprise selections and non-selections, as well as new players and updating on injuries. And we had a few of those for Congo DR. And we will end with a revised version of our Spotlight Review. That's our predictions of who we think are going to be starters. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1. And take a look at the squad that they brought to the Cup. So there are 24 players selected for the squad. If you look at Wikipedia, you might think, hey, Kevin, it's 26. But in fact, if you look closely, there's no number 3 and no number 9. So it's just 24 players. They were allowed to bring 27. That was raised from 23, a decision made in mid-December, raising it to 27, but Congo DR, one of a few teams that didn't use the full allotment there. So 24 players for Congo DR. Those were taken from a 45-man preliminary squad that was published on December 20th. So that means they would have to cut, or 21 of those players were cut from the preliminary squad. We'll also tell you which players were on the preliminary squad. The second order of business here is the games that we're going to look at. We're not really interested in the results of those games, but rather the lineups and perhaps getting a hint of who we can expect to start in the Cup. So that's 2 World Cup qualifiers in November. The first of those was at home to Mauritania, and the second against Sudan. I'll just comment on that because we talked about it in part 1. A very odd selection of players for that game in Sudan. And it was a 0-1 loss there. They won the first November game against Mauritania at home 2-0. But, you know, the strange lineup, we actually wondered if it might cost the manager his job. We didn't really think so, but such a strange lineup. And then they lost the game by a single goal, an own goal, actually. So I don't know if that game is going to shed much light for us, but hopefully the 2 friendlies that they played in January, most teams played just 1, but we may get a bit more information on Congo DR because there are 2 games. The first, again, the scores don't really matter. Both of those games were played in the UAE. The first was a 0-0 draw with Angola, and the second 2-1 loss to Burkina Faso. But again, we're interested in the lineups and the light that the lineups can shed on the starting lineup. Okay, that is it for Section 1, and we move on to Section 2, the main part of the mediacast here, where we look at the candidates, who made it and who didn't. Well, we said we thought the manager might be endangered by that weird selection and loss in their second World Cup qualifying game. But he didn't. He survived that and is still the manager, so we will consider him a successful selection here. That is, by the way, Sebastian Desabre. Sebastian Desabre then leading them through the cup. Okay, let's take a look at our goalkeepers and what we had on the list for part one. Again, we gave some biographical information on these players in part one, and also said why we were putting them in the category that we were. And if you want to review that, that's all in part one. Here, we're just seeing if they made it or not. So we had a definite candidate in Lionel Mpasi, a likely candidate in Baggio Siadi, and a possible candidate in Dimitri Berthold. We also had two possible but unlikely candidates. The first and the only one of these players with any cup experience, Joel Kiasambua, just possible but unlikely, and then Estras Kabamba, also at that possible but unlikely level. Let's see how things turned out. Well, our definite candidate, Lionel Mpasi, selected for the squad. Also the likely candidate, Baggio Siadi, and the possible candidate, Dimitri Berthold. So things went very much as expected there. Possible but unlikely candidate, Joel Kiasambua, not selected even for the preliminary squad there. The other one, Estras Kabamba, at least made it that far onto the preliminary squad, but not beyond that, didn't make the final cut. So there are our three goalkeepers, Mpasi, Siadi, and Berthold. And in section 3, when we do the spotlight review, we'll talk about which one we think is going to be a starter. But you might get a hint because we're going to go over the games. That were played, the recent games, and tell you that it was Mpasi in the first World Cup qualifier against Mauritania, and also in the second one as well. In the first of the friendlies, it is Mpasi as well, so a bit of a pattern developing here. For the second one, I actually don't have an image of the lineups. I just have a list of the players, but it is Mpasi there. So Mpasi starting all 4 games. I could have summarized that a bit better. My apologies. Anyway, Lionel Mpasi certainly looking like the starter. I think we talked about who was more likely as backup in part 1, but we won't delve into that here. Let's go rather on upfield to the defenders and central defenders. Here we had a definite candidate in Chancel Mbemba. Again, he's the only one of the whole list here, 5 players with any cup experience, because they didn't make the cup in 2021. It was in 2019 their last appearance in the cup, and Chancel Mbemba was was on that squad. The likely candidate, we have one likely candidate in Enoch Inonga Baka. And he, well, we won't tell you yet. We'll keep you in suspense. 2 possible candidates, Dylan Batubinsika, but he was under an injury doubt for us here, so we will detail that in section 3, but we'll at least tell you whether he made it or not here, which will give a hint. The other possible candidate is Rocky Bushiri. And finally, we had a possible candidate in Arsene Zola. So just 5 candidates. Usually there are, 5 to 6 central defenders brought to the cup. So a bit thin in their choices here. Maybe we'll see a new candidate. Okay, so Chancel Mbemba selected for the final squad. Also the likely candidate, Enoch Inonga Baka. I'll have to see what he's called in the cup there. The injury doubt there, Dylan Batubinsika, was selected for the squad, so that tells you something about the details we'll give later. So was the other possible candidate, Rocky Bushiri. However, the possible but unlikely Arsene Zola only selected for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. We did have 4 players who were seemingly off the squad. None of them were selected, but we did have a new candidate only making the preliminary squad, though. That is Axel Tuanzebe, plays for Ipswich in England and was with Manchester United. He actually played 17 games for their senior team, Tuanzebe, but doesn't seem to be much of a consideration for Congo DR. Well, he did make the preliminary squad, but not the final cut there. So just 4 central defenders: Mbemba, Inonga or Inonga Baka, Batu Binsika, and Bushiri, the 4 central defenders brought. Let's move over to let's take a look and see who played in those positions. So it was a 2-man central defense in the first game against Mauritania, and we have Mbemba and Inonga. They list him as Inonga here, so I'll go with that. In the second game, I said you can expect some strange stuff here. We have Mbemba and Kayembe. Kayembe we're going to meet shortly as one of the left backs. However, we do see Inonga on the field. He's playing as a right back in this case. In the first of the January friendlies, again, we have Mbembe and Inonga. So that looks like that'll be the starting pair. And I'm not sure what the lineup was for the fourth game, but we have Mbemba there. He's the, we have, and Mbemba flanked by Bushiri. So our possible candidate, Rocky Bushiri, getting on the squad there. So that gives us some insight into who to expect in the cup, and we'll deal with that in section 3. Let's move on to left back. I have no candidates on the. On the graphic, the YouTube graphic. I think I made a mistake and put it in the wrong spot because I do see it here. I had put it under right back. So, okay, let me just fix that, and I'll be right with you. Okay, so we have a likely candidate in Arthur Masuaku, 2 possible candidates, Joris Kayembe and Vital Nsimba, and then seemingly off the squad, Ngonda Muzinga. So 4 candidates there, and I think we had Arthur Masuaku. Part of the reason he was likely was that he was under an injury doubt there. However, he was selected for the final squad, but we will talk about that more. I have my own doubts as to whether he really is fully fit. Anyway, he made it to the squad, Matsuaku, and Joris Kayembe, the first of our possible candidates, also selected for the final squad. However, the second one, Vital Nsimba, just making the preliminary squad, and not making the final cut there. And I'm not sure the reason we left Ngonda Muzinga on the list here. We usually didn't leave players who are seemingly off the squad, but how clever we were, because he was selected for the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut. So he last appeared for them in September 2022. I think we thought he had a sliver of a chance of making it, and I feel wonderful about myself because we were kind of right. Let's look and see who lined up as the left back. So in the first game, it was Joris Kayembe. So we consider him the backup, but keeping in mind that Masuaku was injured for these November games. However, Joris Kayembe was not in the left back position in the second game. We saw already that he was the centre back alongside Mbemba, and it was actually right back Kalulu coming in to fill the position. So really, that the back line of Mbemba, Kayembe, Inonga, and Kalulu is, as we would expect, However, they're just two players playing in different positions, or three players playing in different positions than we would expect. So, as I said, a bit of an odd lineup for that. When we get to the January friendlies, we do see Masuaku back there in the left back position. And in the second game, it's Masuaku also. So he is back fit. And so looks like he would probably be the starter. Okay, let's go on to the right back position. And here, I also have to fix up the graphic. But a bit odd over here, because there were no definite or likely candidates. Just 4 possible candidates. So the first of these was Gideon Kalulu. And then secondly, Jordan Ikoko. He's the only one with tournament experience among these. The third one, Dumercy Amale. And finally, Brian Bayeye. And then we had one player seemingly off the squad, Mpeko Isama. We left him on the list. Again, probably because we thought he had a slim chance of being in consideration. Let's go back to the top. Gideon Kalulu, the first of our 4 possible candidates, was selected. However, Jordan Ikoko, the only one with experience, only making the preliminary squad. So too, do Mercy Amale, just the preliminary squad there. But Brian Bayeye did make the final squad. So 2 of the 4 possible candidates. If we seemed overly proud of our success on the right side, this time Mpeko Isama, the seemingly off the squad player, was not selected even for the preliminary squad. So 1 step forward, 1 back there. Okay, let's look at the right back position and see who's filling it. So Gideon Kalulu in the first game of the World Cup qualifiers, and we saw it's all mixed up in the second game, but let's say Gideon Kalulu was because he lined up as the left back, so he did start. It's Kalulu in the first of the January friendlies and in the second. So Kalulu in all 4 games there, just once as a left back rather than a right back. So he's looking like a starter there. All right, on to the midfield. On to the midfield we go. And I'm needlessly fixing up some of the graphics here, but hopefully the graphics will not slow me down. In this section. Defensive midfielders, quite a few candidates here. We begin with Ido Kayembe at the likely level, so no definite candidates here. Ido Kayembe, though, at the likely level. 3 possible candidates, Mervai Bope, or sometimes called Mervai Bokadi. Secondly, Charles Pickle, and then Omanuke Mfulu, the third of the possible candidates. And then we have possible but unlikely Peli Rudok Mpanzu, and seemingly off the squad Yusuf Mulumbu. So let's take a look at who made it. And Ido Kayembe was selected for the final squad. That is our likely candidate. The first of the possible candidates, Merve Bope, or Merve Bokadi, only making the preliminary squad there. Charles Pickle, the second one, the only one of these possible candidates to make the final squad, because the third one, Omanuke Mfulu, also just making the preliminary squad there. The possible but unlikely candidate, Peli Rudok Mpanzu, did make the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. And Yusuf Mulumbu, captain of the team for the 2017 and 19 African Cups, not on the squad, actually hasn't appeared since the 2019 African Cup, so well off the team, even though he's still playing at the club level. Before we look at the lineups, we'll cover central midfielders. This is actually a shorter list. And the first one is at the likely level. It's Samuel Mutusami. And we have a possible candidate also in Aaron Chibola. And both of those made it to the final squad. So Samuel Mutusami and Aaron Chibola. And we also have a new candidate coming in here. It is Arnaud Lusamba. And he just made the preliminary squad. In fact, we're going to see that none of the new players added to the list are going to make it to the final squad. But we do like having them on the list because sometimes in the following campaign, these players come more into the picture. So perhaps we'll see Arnaud Lusamba in the future. Anyway, let's summarize then the defensive and central midfielders. Despite all the names, we only have 4. So like central defense, it's a little bit thin here because we usually have 5 or 6 in those positions. Here we have Ido Kayembe, Charles Pickle, Samuel Mutusami, and Aaron Chibola. Let's go to the games and see who it is. So in the first game against Mauritania, 4-2-3-1 formation. So two central midfielders, Mutusami and Pickle, both from our list there. Against Sudan, again, it's a bit of an odd formation, but not so much in this position. It is Pickle once again, and Chibola. So that is actually not unusual there. Pickle, by the way, scored the own goal against Sudan. In the first of the January friendlies, it's once again Pickle and Mutusami, as it was in the first November game. And then the same two, Pickle and Mutusami, in what seems to be a 4-3-3 formation. So the third midfielder there, we're going to meet a bit later. He's more of an attacking midfielder. I'm just taking a look to see if any of the names on our list show up in other positions, but it doesn't seem that way. And let's move on to well, we'll quickly deal with left and right midfielders. This position going out of fashion a little bit. We do actually have a 4-3-3 formation, it seems, in the last game there, but we don't really specify this position anymore. If they do use it, it's played by central midfielders or perhaps, as we saw, attacking midfielders. And we only had one player on our list here, and we didn't put him on the list because he was at the possible but unlikely. No, he was at the seemingly off the squad level. So that's a lot of words for you to get nothing. So I'll just be quiet about right and left midfield and move up to left. The left upper quadrant of the field. That could be left wingers, left attacking midfielders, or left forward, depending on the formation. And here we have a likely candidate in Yohan Wissa, and then 2 possible candidates in Jonathan Okita and Aldo Kalulu. None of those with tournament experience. Let's see. Well, it's really no surprise that Yohan Wissa is selected for the squad. We'd have to go back to part 1 to see why we only had him at the likely level, because on the surface he seems a definite candidate. Anyway, at the possible level, both candidates only making the preliminary squad there. So Jonathan Okita and Aldo Kalulu just on the preliminary squad. So just one candidate over here. Well, we did see that they only brought 24 players to the cup, but it seems like almost every position is a bit thin in their numbers here. We'll see if there's one position they focused on. Anyway, let's check the games for the position. And in the first game against Mauritania, it was a 4-2-3-1 formation, so it's a left attacking midfield position, and it is Wissa playing there. In the second game, I don't think I've mentioned, that was a 4-4-2 formation, so we're looking at a left attacking winger there. And once again, it is Wissa playing there. The 1st January game is a 4-2-3-1 formation, and Wissa there as the left attacking midfielder. And finally, in what I'm guessing is a 4-3-3 formation, it's Wissa playing as a left forward, or I'm presuming it's a left forward, but perhaps I shouldn't, because he does actually move around the field. But it looks like in the recent games, anyway, that Wissa is playing on the left side. And we have to guess that that's where he's going to be in the cup. Okay, that's it for the upper left quadrant. Let's go to the right side, and here we have a definite candidate in Michak Elia. 2 likely candidates, Theo Bongonda and Silas Katumpa, also maybe known as Silas Mvumpa. I'll have to see in the cup what they go with there. We also have a possible candidate in Grady Diangana and another in Chadrak Akolo. Chadrak Akolo actually has tournament experience, as does the definite candidate Michak Elia, but the other 3 do not. Let's see who made it. Michak Elia, unsurprisingly, selected for the final squad there. And both of our likely candidates, Theo Bongonda and Silas Katumpa, or Silas Mvumpa, both of those selected. And even our first possible candidate, Grady Diangane, was selected. Chadrak Okolo, though, just making the preliminary squad. And we do have a new candidate here, just a moment. The new candidate is Maccabi Lilepo. He plays in France for Valenciennes, and he only was selected for the preliminary squad, though not the final squad. So here we have 4 candidates. So I guess this is where they're investing their resources. We have, and we can imagine that these players may move around into different positions. Anyway, what we're left with is the 4 candidates: Elia, Bongonda, Kantumpa, and Diangana. Let's take a look on the field and see which players are lining up. So it is Elia playing as a right attacking midfielder in the first game. In the second game, it's Diangana in that 4-4-2 formation, so a right attacking winger. The third game, Bongonda again, this time playing as a right attacking midfielder. And in the final game, Bongonda. So bit of a surprise there, Bongonda playing the last 3 games and Elia left on the bench there. So that'll probably change our prediction from the part 1 spotlight review. But that's a bit later. Let's continue with section 2 here and move on to the forward line, and we begin with attacking midfielders. We had no definite or likely candidates, but a possible candidate in Gail Kakuta, and also possible William Balikwisha. Then one possible candidate, no, sorry, that's possible but unlikely, Michimika. And then the seemingly off the squad, Paul Jose Mpoku, we left on the list because we did think he had a chance of returning. Let's see how it turned out. The first possible candidate, Gail Katuka, was selected for the final squad, but William Balikwisha only made the preliminary squad there. Neither of the other candidates even got that far. Michimika, Paul Jose Mpoku, neither of them selected for the even for the preliminary squad. But we do have a new candidate. Well, not new at all, actually. A player who we thought was well off the team, but surprisingly named to the preliminary squad, and that is Naskins Cabano. So, well, he did last play for the team in September 2022, but his last tournament was the African Cup in 2017. So we thought when he didn't make the 2019 squad, he was basically off the team, but did pop up in September 2022 and popped up again here. So kind of interesting there. And Nathan Cabano still in the picture to a certain degree. He was with Fulham in England from 2016 to 2023, and then moved to Al Jazeera in the UAE recently. So keeping up on the development of that player. Anyway, just Gail Kalulu here. We saw in part one that the attacking midfield position was only used about half the time by Congo DR, and in the last 4 games also used half the time, just in the 4-2-3-1 formation of the 1st November and the 1st January game. And it is Katuka in the first of those games, playing where we would expect central attacking midfield there. And in the second game, the 4-4-2 formation, he doesn't get onto the field. Just want to take a look and see. Okay. Yes, in the third game, again, the 4-2-3-1 formation, Katuka in the central attacking midfield role. And in the fourth game, Katuka is on the field, but he is that attacking midfielder I mentioned in the 4-3-3 formation. Not sure which side of the midfield he's playing on, but in the second line of 3. There in the midfield, Gail Katuka. So it's not a surprise to see an attacking midfielder in that role. So probably I would guess as a right winger or left winger there. Not left winger, left midfielder or right midfielder. Okay, there we go. Let's move on upfield to our last category. Last category because we have no one coded as secondary striker. So we move directly to the forwards. And we had a definite candidate in Cedric Bakambu. And also a definite candidate in Fiston Mayele. I think he's sometimes called Fiston Kalala, but I think Mayele is the commonly used name. No candidates at the likely level, so we go down to the possible level where we find 2 more candidates, Jackson Muleka and Simon Banza. And then we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Jonathan Bolingi, although he had been under an injury watch. And we have seemingly off the squad, Diu Merse Mbokani. But he had last appeared for the squad in March of 2022, so we had a slim chance, a slim hope actually, because I like him, of coming back into the squad. So let's see who made it. Cedric Bakambu, the first of our definite candidates, was selected, as was Fiston Mayele. So both of those selected, unsurprisingly. The first possible candidate there, Jackson Muele, only made the preliminary squad. However, Simon Banza, the second possible candidate, selected for the final squad there. Jonathan Bolingi was selected for the preliminary squad. When you hear the story in section 3, you'll find that that's maybe a bit surprising. But anyway, not making the final squad. And Diu Mercy Mbokani not even making the preliminary squad. So that is it. 3 forwards, again, a bit thin in that position too. So almost every position, well, 3 is okay. I have seen as many as 5 or 6, though, for forwards, which does seem a bit too much. But Congo DR, the only position that they're heavy in is the right winger or right attacking midfield position. Most of the other positions seem a bit thin. Anyway, there we have it, the end of section 2. Now we got to look at the games for the forward. So 4-2-3-1 formation of the first game, and it's Bakambu playing as the lone forward there. In the second game, the 4-4-2 formation, it's Bongonda, so the right winger or right attacking midfielder Bongonga, alongside Banza, Simon Banza there. But again, we did note that that was almost an experimental formation with a lot of changes there. But perhaps not as much as we thought, because we do see Banza in the first friendly 4-2-3-1 formation, so the lone forward, Banza. And then in the second game, it is Bakambu playing in what we assume is a 4-3-3 formation, the centre forward. So that gives us something to chew on in the Spotlight review, which comes in section 3. But before we do that, we're going to do kind of a summary of what we've seen here. So section 3 begins with a summary of notable non-selections. Well, we really have none. All of our likely and definite players, all of the players we had in the definite and likely category were selected, so no notable non-selections here. Surprise inclusions, I'm going to actually just put one, even though it was on the preliminary squad. Really, the only surprise for us here was Naskins Cabano being named to the preliminary squad. Okay, that's it for that. Otherwise, yes, no surprise inclusions. New players, no new players, or no players who were not initially on our list in part 1 making it to the final squad. And we're going to add a new category of kind of farewells here. Farewells to some veterans before we look at the update on injuries. So we noted in part 1 there was a bit of an overhaul of the 2019 squad, and we only saw a few names here of players with tournament experience. So these players, we're going to note a few players who are gone from the squad. First is the starting goalkeeper Lei Matampi, starter not only in 2019 but in 2017, but not even none of these players even making the preliminary squad here. Second one, Marcel Tisserand, starting central defender in the 2019 and 2017 African Cups, but no longer part of the picture. Right back, Mpeko Isama, again, well, he goes all the way back to the 2013 African Cup. So 4 cups in a row for him where he had been the starter, but not in the picture anymore. Yusuf Malumbu, we mentioned during section 2. He was the captain of the team in 2017 and 19, also involved in the last 4 tournaments. And Trevor Mputu is the last one we will put on the list here. He's actually retired from soccer altogether, and actually was not part of recent African Cups, but captain of the team for the 2013 African Cup. In fact, he goes all the way back to the 2006 African Cup, but he did play up until March 2021 for the national team, and retired from soccer in 2023. And the last name we want to put on our list is Giumursi Mbokani on the farewell list here. Even though he didn't appear in the 2019 African Cup, he was kind of a big name, especially in the 2013 African Cup and 2015. But he did play all the way up to the up to March 2022, so not as off the team as one might have thought. Okay, let's move up to our update on injury. So we had a couple of players from part 1 that were left kind of hanging, and we wanted to see how things developed for them. So the first one was central defender Dylan Batubinsika, and he has recovered from injury. He was injured for all of November. That's what made him unavailable to the international games that month. But he was recovered and playing for his club on December 2nd, and he was available for the two pre-tournament friendlies. So recovered from injury then, Dylan Batu Benfica. Also recovered, but I think still an injury doubt, is Arthur Masuaku. Arthur Masuaku. And his situation was really from the beginning of the season. He had been struggling with a hamstring strain. Although he had kind of come in for a game here and there, really the pattern was he was off for 2 games, came in to play a game, then off for 3 more games with the same injury, came in to play a game, then off for 5 games. That went all the way really up until December. He did play the last 2 club games in mid to late December, and then, as we saw, did play the 2 pre-tournament friendlies. So hopefully that means he's over his injury. But given the on and off nature of it, we think it still may surface. So we put him as a bit of an injury doubt. But good that he was selected for the squad and started the 2 warm-up games there. Finally, Jonathan Bolingi. We're going to put him in the injured but was not a strong candidate category. We mentioned that he had a collapsed lung. That sounds quite serious for the last 5 games. For all of the fall games from September to November. That continued right up until the Cup, and it's actually a bit surprising even that he was named to the preliminary squad. Perhaps that suggests he's coming to the end of it. But even in that case, he would have required a few games of fitness. We think he wasn't a strong candidate because really he didn't play much during the year prior to June 2023. He hadn't played for the team for a year, and then in June 2023 was just on the bench for a couple of games, and after that was absent due to the injury. So we think he wasn't a strong candidate anyway, but Jonathan Bolingi just making the preliminary squad there. Okay, now it's time to move on to our last order of business here in section 3, and that is our spotlight review. And we did that at the end of part 1, but now we have a little bit more information, so we can do a revised spotlight review. So let's let's go from what we had at the end of part 1. Sebastian De Saber, well, even though we said that last odd lineup, maybe it was a signal of some unsettlement on the team or what have you, and we said there's a chance that he may not be there for the Cup. We still had him in green in the spotlight review, so we didn't seem to take that too seriously, and it's good that we didn't, because now we know he'll be in charge for the Cup, so he remains in green. And by the way, if you're watching the YouTube, green means we're confident that this person is going to be a starter, and blue means, we think it's anywhere from potentially to likely, but not fully confident about it. It's a little less than likely and a little more than potentially. Anyway, goalkeeper Lionel Mpasi, we had him in green, confident that he would be the starter. The last 4 games have reinforced that. He started both the January friendlies as well as the World Cup qualifiers, so we feel even more confident that he's going to be the starter. Last time we had Chancel Mbemba as the only central defender we were fully confident would be starting. The case with Dylan Batu Benfica depended on his injury, but we did think that if he recovered from his injury, he would be probably the main candidate to partner with Mbemba. Now we've changed that a little bit because Inonga started both of the January pre-tournament friendlies, even though Batu Benfica was fit to play in those games. He did actually come in at halftime in the first of those games, but now we put Inonga ahead of Batu Benfica. We still think there's a possibility that Batu Benfica might be the starter, but less so than we did at the end of part one. So Chansal and Bemba are definite there, and Inonga are preference ahead of Batu Benfica. Left back, now that Arthur Masuaku is recovered, we're going to put our full confidence behind him being a starter. Hopefully his injury won't flare up during the Cup. And Joris Kayembe looks like the backup left back, but we don't see much chance of him starting ahead of Masuaku. But he is the backup Kayembe. On the right side, Gedi and Kalulu. I think we expressed a bit of doubt at the end of part one. But anyway, even if we did, we had him in green. And that is reinforced here by him starting all 4 games, even if one of them was as a left back. So Gedi and Kalulu, we're confident he'll be the starting right back. Central midfield, we weren't really sure, but now we can be a little bit more certain. We had... all we had for central midfield was Samuel Mutusami in blue, so kind of a likely starter, but we weren't fully confident about it. Now, actually, we throw our weight behind Charles Pickle, who started, I believe it was 3 of the 4 games, might have started all 4. Anyway, we're confident that Pickle will be a starter. I think Pickle did start all 4 there. So we even put him ahead of Mutusami. But Mutusami did start 3 of them, including the 2 warm-ups, pre-tournament warm-ups. So we go from blue to green on him. We think quite strongly that Pickle and Mutusami will be the starting midfielders. On the left wing, Johan Wisa was there. Again, depending on the formation, a left winger, attacking midfielder, or forward. But Johan Wisa's been on the left side. He does move around. But not only do we nominate him as a starter, but now we're fairly sure it will be on the left. Not so clear on the right wing, though. We had Michak Elia as a definite, and now we've removed that. We think Michak Elia still might be a starter, but actually, Theo Bongonda has been starting ahead of him, especially in the 2 warm-up games there. Bongonda actually started as a co-forward against Sudan. So the last 3 games he has started, the last 2 of them as the right attacking midfielder, or that upper left or upper right quadrant player. So we're actually going to put Bongonda ahead of Elia now, but we still have Elia on the list as a possible starter. Central attacking midfield, we'll come back to. They only use that formation in about half of the things, so we're going to come back to the player coded there in the special mention coming up. Let's deal with forwards first, though. We had Cedric Bakambu in blue, so we thought he was the likely starter. He was our only candidate there. But now we're going to add Simon Banza, kind of equally as likely as Bakambu, because Banza has been starting. He started the game against Sudan and the first friendly there, and Bakambu came back in for the last one. So we think they may be actually sharing the position, or it's still kind of undecided. So Bakambu and Banza both there. And then the special mention category, we'll put attacking midfielder Gael Kakuta. He started 3 of the last 4 games, but one of them he started as more of a, I think it was a right midfielder. So it depends whether they use the formation a lot. If the formation has an attacking midfielder, we think it'll be him. But we think even if the formation doesn't have it, we might find him more in central midfield. Okay, well, for most media casts, that would be it, the last order of business. But for this one, we can go one step further because we weren't able to put this out on time. and we're doing it after, we can actually look at game one and check our predictions. So we're going to quickly do that, and that will be our last order of business. Here we go, game one. So Sebastian de Sabra, is the manager of the team through the cup, so no late changes there. The starting keeper is I should say it's a 4-1-4-1 formation, which we haven't seen them use that much. They're playing Zambia in this game, so a bit of a change in formation. That's a bit unexpected, but anyway, Lionel Mpasi, the starting keeper, as we expected. Central defence, Chancel Mbemba was our definite starter, and he did indeed start. And then the question was who would start alongside of him. We were leaning towards Ngonga there, and it was Ngonga. So Batu Binsika kind of edged out by Ngonga as he recovered from his injury there. Left back, Arthur Masuaku, provided his injury allowed, and we thought he was over it. We thought he'd be the starter, and he was. So full points there. Gideon Kalulu, the right back, he is the starter, so we're doing quite well in our predictions here. Central midfield, we had Pickle and Mutusami. The central midfield changed a little bit compared to what we expected. Basically, three central midfielders. Mutusami, who's coded as a central midfielder, is actually playing as a stopper. A slight surprise there because Charles Pickle is coded as a defensive midfielder, so one would expect that he would be the stopper, but he's not. Nevertheless, both of them are on the field there, and we were right in our predictions there. And in fact, the other midfielder there, the other central midfielder, is Gail Kakuta, the central attacking midfielder who we thought might start in the central midfield if they didn't use the central attacking midfielder position. So, wow, we did really well on that one. Katuka starting. Left wing is, as we expected, Johan Wissa. In this case, it is a left attacking winger position in this formation. And on the right wing, we were unsure between Bongonda and Michak Ilaya. We actually edged towards Bongonda, putting him ahead on the list. And we were right there too. Woohoo, we're doing great. So Bongonda starting ahead of Michak Ilaya. But I do expect that Ilaya will start, at least a game or two in this. I wouldn't be surprised if he was subbed in here too. Okay, let's move. I just checked that, and we were right. He was subbed in 71 minutes in. Not subbed in for Bongonda though, but subbed in for Katuka, the central midfielder there. Anyway, forwards, we were unsure between Bakambu and Banta, and I think even though we have Bakambu first on the list here, we thought it equally possible. Anyway, long story short, it is Bakambu selected to start, so not a surprise then that he was selected ahead of Banza. We thought it was kind of a 50-50 there. All right, that brings us to the end, and you have the starting lineup there for Congo DR to go home with, and that brings us to the end of our look at Congo DR's players. They didn't make the 2019 African Cup. They didn't make the 2021 African Cup, but really over the course of history, Congo DR is a team that would be expected to make it to the African Cup on a fairly regular basis. So I expect that we will be looking at them again for the next African Cup. That takes place in December 2025. And so it's quite possible we'll be looking at Congo DR's players once again in October or November of 2025. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.